Welcome to the Level Design Podcast, where we look at the world of game development through the lens of level design. In this podcast, we look back and discuss the games of 2019. And welcome back to the show. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jonathan, and Happy New Year, Robert. And a Happy New Year to all of our listeners. And we always say this, a very special episode because we always have special guests. But in this episode, you have us, your monthly presenters. But we're going to do something a little bit different this month, in which we're going to look back on the wonderful year that was 2019 with fond memories of the games that we played. They don't have to be from games from 2019. They can be the games that we played in 2019. I think that's fair.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's good because it changes up the list instead of just being a formulaic list from 2020 games.
And this is a more personal podcast, right? We're not here just to promote someone's game, which we probably will, but do you know what I mean? It's like the games that we played. So we're going to go through each of our top 4 games of last year. I think that's going to be fair, isn't it?
I can manage to. Well, I definitely can talk about some of the games that weren't released in 2019, so I can fill up that list.
We'll hand over to you, Rob, when we get to like your top 2 games. So, Jonathan, do you want to kick off?
Yes, accounting for games that didn't necessarily come out in 2020, I would put Gris.
2019, mate.
2019. I would put Gris or Gris, however you want to pronounce it. That came out at the back end because I played it on PS4. It came out at the back end of 2018, I think. But that was a really nice little game.
Had a very unique art style, right?
Yeah, the art style was super cool. Really simple puzzle platformer, but it's just like as an overall experience, it was just like really like pleasing to play through. That was probably one of the first games I probably finished in 2019.
That's something that I think I'm going to have to get to in 2020 because it just won all the awards. If you read Wireframe magazine, it's been all over that all of last year.
It deserves it as well.
I mean, I haven't played it, so it's a platformer, isn't it? Or
it's like a puzzle platformer.
For me, and this is actually a bit of an older game. I now look when it was actually made. But I actually played a lot of it last year. Was Echo from a company called the Ultra. Okay. Unfortunately, they went under, but it was just this amazing game from level design point of view. It's filled with corridors. Because you yes, I know I have a reputation of disliking corridors, but this game was set in a kind of like Louis the 14th style.
I know it. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It had an adaptive AI, so as the lights went out, these copies of yourself start chasing you, but they only have the powers that you show them when the lights are on. Okay. So if you shoot at one of them during a light cycle, the next light cycle, they'll know how to shoot back at you.
That's really cool.
But, sounds like a great mechanic.
Yeah, it was. It's a lot of fun as well because you're going like, I don't want to shoot them, but really I have to, you know. And the design of it and the colors were fantastic. It was not something I've seen before, like a very opulent gold filigree and these chairs, you know, all over the place. There wasn't a lot of assets, but it was very interesting, the scale of it. It just felt really big. It's a one game that when they say that this is a planet-sized underground facility, you kind of believe it. But yeah, go and recommend that. Unfortunately, I think the Ultra have now closed up shop as a studio, which is a real pity because that as a game that was amazing.
Yeah, it looked fantastic. The visual style reminded me strangely of that old GameCube game, PN03, the Capcom game.
Okay.
So which was a very stylish thing with an amazingly cool lead character who sort of danced through the scenes and stuff. Yeah, it was a really distinctive visual style, and now I remember what you're talking about. That's
my number 4 for last year. Jonathan, what do you think of your number 3 for last year?
For me, it was probably Oxenfree. I didn't actually get around to playing that properly until last year, and I played it on my Switch, which was quite nice. It was just after I'd moved down to Brighton as well, so I had no other console with me. I just had my Switch, so it was a really nice game to kind of just like jump into. But yeah, the atmosphere, the story, like the choices and stuff like that was all done really well. So obviously I can't wait to check out After Party, which I know came out at the end of like 2019. But once again, I'm holding out for my Switch version, hopefully.
Because I think I've just got that on the Epic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to play that at some point this year. So that's might end up being my game of 2020. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe Oxenfree? I haven't actually played it. I've seen is it the dialogue one? Is it the
yeah,
one
it's like a text adventure sort of thing almost, but it's kind of like this dialogue heavy. You this like cast of characters that go to this island, and obviously there's something quite not right, and just the way they build the atmosphere and the choices, and one of the characters has these like visions throughout, and that kind of sees the abnormalities and stuff, so it's quite cool. But the really cool thing about it is you can replay it, and when you replay it you see different things, and obviously you know what's happening, you know what's going on, you get flashbacks and flash forwards all the time. So the second playthrough is a little bit more trippy, which is quite nice.
I kind of like games that you can actually play through twice, or more than twice. I think the Detroit Become Human, which is not in my list, but had
it's fun. I really enjoyed it. I was actually sort of expecting to not like Detroit.
Yeah.
Because
I think I was the same.
I think I've got a love-hate relationship with games from Quantic Dream, and I thought it was extremely well made, really viscerally attaching in terms of the emotional connection to the characters in the game. But potentially, I think maybe sort of tweaking the heartstrings a little too strongly in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
Just sort of, I guess, kind of putting you into the worst possible situation and seeing what you'd do.
Yeah.
Which was uncomfortable at times, but no negative real feedback on that. So there were some moments like when I had to protect a young girl in a house. It was because it was funny because I reacted kind of like almost instinctively because I knew there was a gun upstairs.
Yeah.
I literally ran up the stairs and grabbed the gun immediately rather than thinking about any other way of solving this problem. I just thought that kind of said something a bit about me and how I'd been. Maybe that reveals too much about me. Just go for the nuclear option, shoot everyone.
Yeah. But that's a valid choice in that game. I mean, it's
absolutely.
It's but talking about replayability, I love how they've kind of exposed it, saying like these are the paths that you took, went upstairs and got the gun.
Yeah, but what could you have done?
But yeah, exactly. But you could have done all these other things, and you could replay that part to see something else.
So that was extremely interesting to see that graph at the end of each level. It horribly tickled my. I don't know when. I think a lot of people are completely obtuse in how they explore video game maps, in that they always go the place they're not meant to go first. So they make sure they see everything before you reach some inconvenient checkpoint and it's lost forever. So certainly that kind of made me think, oh no, I wish I'd been able to do that. I wish I'd managed to react in time to get that option. But yeah, it encourages replayability and was a really neat touch.
Yeah, I think with that game though, it was the branches worked well because you kind of didn't quite know what you had to do to get certain branches. Like when you saw it, you like you say, you try to go where you're not meant to go like first, so you try to explore. And like I remember doing that for a few of the scenes and then still finishing one of the chapters and seeing a branch I didn't find, and I was like, well, what like series or like kind of combination of events actually takes you down that branch? So like
that's very good.
They're not always like extremely obvious either, which was a very nice touch when I was playing through it.
Yeah, because often in games you can, especially as designers, you can see exactly where this narrative branch is happening, and it's totally sort of signposted and flagged up, and you go, okay, well, here's the time when I switch. So for those not to be obvious was a testament to the skill of their game design, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't even the one I was going to talk about. That was I'm glad it came up. So yeah, my number 3 game of last year is Observation, which we talked to
Mr. John McLachlan.
John McLachlan of this parish. Yeah, that game had a lovely twist to it for me. No spoilers. I don't think there's a twist. It's just it has an amazing visual design. as well as level design. The research that those guys went through for the puzzles, everything looks like came out of the NASA or Sputnik, handbooks and things like that. And when you get that level of research, you have to like take your hat off, and you can really get immersed in something,
Yeah.
So that was my number 3. Moving on to number 2, the penultimate one. Jonathan, would you like to share your number 2?
Yeah, so my number 2 is going to be Control. Which obviously means it's not my game of last year.
Oh my God. On the Level Design podcast.
But it was one of my highly anticipated games of last year. Phenomenal game, phenomenal experience. I would say it was the technical stuff, the technical hurdles that held it back for me. There's a few decisions within the game that I wouldn't wholeheartedly say I agree with, which obviously dampened the overall experience. And for that, that's probably why I rank it in as number 2.
Okay, wow.
What do you think of it, Mark?
I really like Control. I was very much.
Is this spoiling? Spoiling your list somewhat?
I'm not going to say which level is. You're going to have to wait till what my number 1 and 2 are. So my number 2 is Death Stranding, and I really liked it. It did a lot of very different things. I mean, I like it so much that I still play it. I'm playing my second playthrough. Because,
okay, so you're not just cleaning up deliveries, you've actually started it again.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but you get to a point that there's an open world game that you can now just
do whatever,
play the open world. But it has every odd choice in there, and everything that suddenly that springs up on you, it seems like what, which I kind of enjoyed. Right, that's what games should be surprising.
Yeah.
And then you get to points that you can go okay, I've got this little thing that helps me carry cargo. You're basically a postman. And the next thing you know, you're using it as a surfboard, as a sledge, and you can ski down a mountain on it. And it's well, that's a mechanic you have to make, right? This is not something that you'd by accident, or maybe it was an accidental thing, and he just went, yeah, just make it. And it's good fun, and you have these kind of strange times, some melancholy times as you're climbing mountains and having bad weather and things like that. And I found that very peaceful as a game, weirdly enough. So that's my number 2. I really liked it. I'm still kind of, it's my go-to single player game. And even if it's not a single player game, well, it is a single player game, but it really sticks to its message.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
We're making connections with other people, which is fair play, man. You really went with it. You run with that. But
I think with that said, it's as much as I love that game, I can't recommend it to everyone. I know it's definitely not a game for everyone, and that's without a doubt. And I think it's the thing that is more impressive about it is they took traversal, which is one of the most bog standard things you do in a game, moving around, and made it the core of the gameplay, right?
Right. That's a real walking simulator.
Yeah.
That's a real walking simulator.
Yes, that's what I've heard people describe it as, the AAA walking simulator.
Yeah.
I kind of feel that undersells it a little bit, but yes, that's kind of
what
it is.
But it's an actual simulator. It's like a QWOP, of walking simulators, because you can fall over if you're not doing things properly, right? If you're not walking properly, you will fall over. But it's...
I have to admit that the more I hear people talk about it, the more I like the idea of it. Yeah. It's been really interesting on Games Twitter to see people basically slagging off Kojima for all the badly translated tweets that were shared with us. So, with things saying this was a Hideo Kojima game, which I can't believe I made myself, which turned out to be a bad translation of a less egotistic tweet that he originally made in Japanese. But then people have played it and gone into it making fun of it, and then have said, actually, this is really, really interesting, fun, and uncompromising in the way that it forces you to play and explore a world and build bridges.
Yeah, and sometimes it's literally building bridges. But so that's been my number 2. I could really wax lyrical, but I had to make a choice between Death Stranding and another game for my number 1.
Well, just to clarify, because we kind of skipped it earlier, Death Stranding was actually my number 3.
Oh, was
so
it?
It's also not. It's also yes. It's not my number one.
Ah, brilliant.
Wow. Okay. So I'm really intrigued what your number one is, Jonathan. So, but we have to.
Should I talk about my number two?
Yes.
I think we need to talk about Rob's number.
If you know, in
number
a
two.
phrase, a game that I started a long time ago and only recently finished, and that's just the original Dishonored. I got to the level where you kill the High Overseer, or you are told to kill the High Overseer.
Yeah.
And I remember the level very distinctly the first time I played through it. And I was thinking, this is fantastic. This is obviously the last level of the game. I'm going to love this. This is going to be such an amazing climax to the gameplay. And I was really doing really well by then. And I, could sprint through levels like a ghost and not be seen by anyone, and then slip in and kill someone. And I jumped up quite a few walls and managed to leap onto some chandeliers, jump through a window, slid under a fire, and killed the High Overseer within about 2 minutes of getting inside the building. And then I thought, I know. And then I thought, oh, what a letdown. And for some reason, I didn't want it to happen. So I reloaded, and then I kind of lost interest for some reason.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And now, so in this long story, after playing Thief again, I thought, right, I want to see where Dishonored took it. And I played that level again. I took my time this time and explored everything, and then killed the High. Actually, I didn't kill him. I framed him, and then carried on. And then, of course, there's loads more. And
Just a bit.
Some really, really interesting bits of gameplay. I think it did fall down at times. It didn't quite reach the peaks of what my brain wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some incredibly strong images, some really well done bits of level design, which is, of course, what we're talking about a lot of the time. And particularly just getting through the kind of outskirts of the plague-ridden city. I thought it was really cracking atmosphere. And for that reason, now I've finally completed it and finally taken my revenge on all the traitors. I feel like I can heartily recommend it for the 3 people in the world who haven't played it yet.
You can start the second one now, though.
I know. I've got them all sitting here, literally in front of me in my library.
Dishonored was a funny one because I actually stopped playing quite at the beginning. I couldn't get the mechanics, which were really easy. Like the next time I played it, I'm like, why couldn't I get them? They were pretty easy. And I kind of quit after like intro or something like that, and never went back to it. Yeah. And it's not. Then I finally went back to it and go, okay, fine, I'll try this weird indie title. And then like got hooked on it and got like absolutely loved it, and it was like I could not have get enough of it. But I've kind of gone back to finish all the DLCs because there's references of it in later games, and so I did a bit of even though it's not in my list, but I did another playthrough of Dishonored last year. It's an awesome game. It's a masterclass on always figuring out in your level design that if you're going to get somewhere, there has to be at least 6 ways in and ways out.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. Yeah, I think some of the mechanics after Thief, it's like the blink mechanic is just it makes the game almost too easy in some ways. So I think maybe that's partly what you may have run up against. Mark, would you say that's fair? That if you don't see one of these mechanics, it can be incredibly difficult. And that's such a difficult thing for them to balance. And they kind of carried it off basically through the world building and the art style. I feel like the mechanics were partially flawed, but just they worked in the game as it was.
Yeah, I think I need to have another play, but then go like no teleport.
In the second one, I think you kind of get more heavily graded towards that kind of stuff. Like for you approaching the scenarios in different ways. It's like it's a more of an apparent thing as you play through the game.
Right.
Brilliant. I can't wait.
So maybe we'll come back in 2021 and say like, what was your year of 2020? Will's actually. So Jonathan, I have to ask, you have kept me in suspense long enough. What's your number one?
My game of last year was the Resident Evil 2 remake.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I just started playing that as well, so I can't make it my game of 2019.
I think is like, despite it being a remake, like what Capcom did with that game, like the tech they used, it was probably the most complete experience I had last year. The atmosphere, the level design of the police station, like still feeling so familiar from playing it years and years ago in those polygon characters. And it's one of the few games I've played this year where like it actually had an understandable space. So the police station becomes this like environment you spend so much time in, yet you just know it. You know how you understand where you are in it, and you like build familiarity throughout it. It's the only game I've replayed this year. And gone through multiple playthroughs. That might be more down to its length, and obviously you do have Leon and Claire's campaign, but I did them both, and then they don't really have the full like kind of B-track stuff in, which they had from the original, but you do get like slight different ways to go through it in different scenarios. But yeah, just like what they achieved with that game, it kind of just reminded me of what I want from a horror game, or what I expect from a horror game, and I hadn't had that from like a very long time. I think the Evil Within series was probably the last one that came close, but that kind of went too far. It went like too far, and like this just got too weird.
Okay.
No, it just got too weird. It didn't really feel scary anymore. It just felt strange instead of being horrifying. But yeah, with what they did with Resident Evil 2 remake, they honored what the original was, but also just like recaptivated the entire experience.
You're right. I mean, from my limited experience, because I think I've just got into the police station, I'm starting to go in different places. I felt tense. I felt at home. I felt that this was the original. Does that make sense? Because I haven't played the original for like God knows how long. If I played the original, I'd be like, what the hell's going on? But now I'd be like, this is how I remember it in my mind.
Yeah, that just... I suppose not everyone wants to feel tense like 100% of the time, but it's like when the lickers are loose in the police station and you know you have hardly any bullets, or you've only got your pistol left. This is that like anxiousness as you running around, and I was just like, I haven't had this in a game for such a long time.
I think before I got to the police station, I ran out of bullets because I freaked out at a zombie, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna die so quick.
Got to be conservative.
That's true. Hopefully this will be my game of 2020. And I think it was on sale on PlayStation recently. Just saying, not that we get any, kickback.
You got an affiliate code.
Yeah. I totally have to get. We have to get on that and start putting like, if you click on the link.
It really supports us, guys.
Yeah. Just say that we sent you. I don't know if that's going to help anything. Rob, what's your...
We'll hand out Mark's credit card number at the end of this podcast, so you can all have a copy on Mark.
That's not how that works. I don't know how that works.
Okay, I'll tell you about my game of the best game I played this year. So I was lucky enough to be on the jury for the BAFTA original property.
Oh, right. Okay.
And on that, I played some really fantastic games, including Subnautica, and including Into the Breach, which finally won the category, which I think was a brilliant achievement in game design, and a wholly deserved winner. And now the game that I voted for, and the one that did win in other categories in the BAFTAs, was Return of the Obra Dinn.
Oh,
yes,
God, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I it's not fair in some ways, because it was a game released in 2018, but that rules out the window. So I can feel confident in saying that.
Well, it's when you played it, right?
Yeah, absolutely, it was. Yeah, totally. And there's no game that I've played this year that has reached the sort of heights of me just responding to it, just feeling that I was in the presence of just a really outstanding piece of game design and story design and mechanics design and visual design in many ways. It was just a totally unique world that I loved exploring, had some wonderfully human and comic touches, and also brilliant music stings and just excellent.
I forgot the music
acting.
stings, but like at the moment you said the Return of Obra Dinn, I think I had the soundtrack playing in my head. So
when you get a clue and or when you go back first, find a body and you go back and the memento mori clock goes round and you go. It's so exciting every time it happens. I go, yes, a new story. I'll uncover some new clues. It's just sort of like Pavlov's bell.
Yeah,
sort of my sort of narrative hungry brain in that game just starts salivating and I'm like, oh, this is so fun.
This is one of the things I'm actually working on a game at the moment, and that's the feeling I'm trying to get. And Jonathan will understand the feeling of building something with the PCC in Death Stranding. You know, like is that achievement that you get after all the hard work of getting materials and
right.
Lugging stuff backwards and forwards. You can only carry so much, but you still want to do it. It's the payoff at the end, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So it's the same as Obra Dinn. That little payoff after you've built all this stuff up, and it just goes ding, and it's a Pavlov's bell of.
It made me feel like I wasn't an idiot.
Yeah.
So it helped me to feel really good at figuring stuff out and noticing the details of people's clothes and putting things in. There were a couple of things that didn't work in that I wasn't allowed to guess the people, even though I knew obviously who they were just through process of elimination. And some of the things I confess the sort of the shameful retreat to Google for one person's clue. Partly because I fingered one person as the wrong person, and that confused me for about 2 hours. So that was a really bad thing. I thought one person was the bosun, and he wasn't the bosun. He was like the gunner's mate. And I was like, oh no, completely ruined everything.
Well, because just so that for our listeners, I don't know what to call our listeners. You know, like in podcasts, you call people,
our loyal subscribers.
Our level design.
Our wonderful people.
Our levelers. I don't know. What do you call a group of people that listen to the Level Design podcast? Anyway, we'll put a poll up somewhere later on to choose that. But to describe like that game has got this detective mechanic which you can't guess. It's not a multiple choice guess. You have to put the name of the person, which you have to find out, the way that they died and where they died, and who killed them. In some cases. Unless it's suicide, because otherwise it'll be themselves. For example, or accident, I can't remember what it is. But there's like 30 ways that people can die. Yeah. There's like 40 locations.
And each time you find a dead body, you get the opportunity to go back in time, and you're in a kind of freeze frame where all the sounds play on a blank screen for about 30 seconds or a minute before you go into the world, and then you're in a world and you can explore it, and you can see everyone in this freeze frame of people being shot or stabbed or whatever. And then you from the clues you see, you walk around like Bunk Moreland in The Wire and try and figure out all the trajectories of where things have come from and who struck the killing blow and how they died. And I loved the bits where you found new bodies in the kind of the present day of this ship you're trying to figure out the secrets of. I remember one guy sort of some tattered bits of his body hanging outside a window, and I just felt really cool when I sort of saw this like little shadow, and I thought, oh, what's that out there? And then that was a body, and I could go back in time and find out how he got torn into pieces. Lovely.
Yeah, that's a hell of a game to have as your number one. Even though, technically...
Yes, sorry.
I mean, it was October, 2018 that was released. So So you playing it in 2019, that's fine.
By the Mayan long calendar, it was still in the
Yes.
So I don't think it's a surprise that my number one game is Pokemon... No,
hey.
No, it's Control. Obviously, Remedy's Control. We've just talked about it because you pipped me to the start. But that was. I think there's a lot of things in that game that I liked from a level design point of view and from my failed attempt at being an architect point of view, all the brutalism and the interior design. And we talked about at massive length in the podcast with Paul Erith. but it was a real environment for me,
It's like I said, the Resident Evil out edging that is my game of the year. It's probably partly down to nostalgia and just the familiarity with Raccoon City. But Control, we talked about it on the podcast, same as you. The level design, the architecture, the brutalism, the story, the soundtrack in that game, it all came together so well. And just Jessie's character, the little inner monologue she had, that's like throwback to Max Payne stuff that I used to love, and the fact that Max Payne's voice is also in the game. But it's just little things like that, those little touches. Remedy did a phenomenal job, and I can't wait to see what happens with the DLC and stuff over the next year.
The expeditions. And I at the end of the day, I really like Acti, the janitor. I think that's he's my favorite character ever. So quickly before we end the podcast, I think wanted to just give a shout out of games that you're looking forward to in 2020. For me, there's quite a few, but I think one which would be particular of interest to Jonathan is that there's going to be a Resident Evil 3 remake.
Yes. I'm interested to see how that one is. I'm not as big of a fan as 3 in terms of the actual Resident Evil series.
Right.
But
it's Resident Evil 2 is a classic, right?
Yeah. But if they manage to recreate something similar to what they have with 2, because they have said things will be different, then I can see it delivering a similar experience to what I've had with Resident Evil 2.
And the other game that I'm kind of really looking forward to is, Half-Life Alyx, or Half-Life 3, as we really want to call it.
It's what we all want.
Yeah.
Or is it Half-Life what you're going to get? And of course, actually, the two other big ones that I'm really looking forward to are The Last of Us 2, because I'd really like to see what happens with that. That's what I call a cinema game. It's a game that I hang out with my friends. We all hang out in the same place.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. I think I obviously played Last of Us. I played it quite late because I just didn't have a PlayStation before.
Yeah, me neither. I played it on the PlayStation 4 because I didn't have a PlayStation 3. So
yeah, it's the same here, exactly. And I thought it was a really affecting, attaching story. I think the level design and the mechanics design in some ways were spoiled some bits of it for me. In that it made me play the game in a way that I didn't want to play it.
Oh, really? So you wanted more stealth, or you wanted more like gun ho?
I think I didn't really want much combat or stealth. I wanted to explore the world and get to know the people. So maybe if it had been more like Death Stranding, I probably
I agree with what Rob's kind of saying there. A lot of the zones you went into throughout the story, they were just encounter zones. Whether you had to stealth them or combat them, there wasn't that much chance to explore the world. Obviously, there was lots of...
And it's gorgeous as well.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely gorgeous world.
Yeah.
So
there was a lot of environmental storytelling in that game that you could obviously see, but it was always behind a barrier. You could never go to it. You can kind of witness these events, which is, once again, it's testament to the narrative and all the themes and stuff they string with throughout. But yeah, that's one of the biggest drawbacks I think a lot of people had with the Last of Us. Its story was hands down, it was phenomenal. It was really well told, really well directed. But the gameplay was a bit lackluster because it didn't evolve anything really, right? It did everything fairly well. I think that's something they've taken on board. If you've seen any of the footage for part 2, I'm interested to see how that evolves. But also, they've set the bar very high for what they have to deliver in this second part.
Because people love it so much. Yeah. It's got such a good reputation that they've got a tough job there. I think what I'd really love is Last of Us that didn't have an inventory management system.
Oh yeah,
didn't have all those buttons and modes and things like that. If they could just do one where you really feel like you are on your own with a couple of weapons on your back, just swap through them, and not have that kind of all these intrusive dialogues and UIs and stuff like that, I would have loved it so much more.
Yeah,
I kind of forgotten about some of that because I did a little bit of UI studies on just interaction in The Last of Us for another game, and I liked it how it was very minimal until you got to the inventory.
Yeah.
Now, I think the final game that I was going to touch on, final couple of games, in fact, is Cyberpunk 2077, which I'm really looking forward to. That's going to be huge.
Yeah, I think the scale of that game kind of scares me. It's
it's terrifying from a games production point of view. almost can't figure out how they're doing it.
Well,
it's really shockingly scary.
Just think how long it's been in development. They went silent for 3 years before they started talking about this game.
Yeah, I should make myself feel better about it. It's like when you see like inside, and oh my god, how it is, and then you realise they spent 6 years on it, and you go, oh, okay, I understand now how they managed to get it so damn polished.
It's like I just think about to me, I think of The Witcher. Like I spent a lot of time in The Witcher 3, and that game was huge in itself, and the detail.
I've just started playing that as well, just to understand,
I'll see you in like 200 hours or so.
Hey man, something's got to like get away my Death Stranding edition.
But if they recapture that same level of detail, like in the world and stuff with Cyberpunk, which from some of the stuff we've seen, it looks like they are. Granted, we've only seen a hub or a area like so far in all the footage, but if they get that, like all the characters and like the world reacts to you, like kind of some of the choices you make, it will react. If they get all that into Cyberpunk, I can easily see myself losing hours to this game.
I genuinely think that they have that they are aiming to and have a chance of dethroning Rockstar as the kind of the quadruple A open world game developers.
I mean, they're the right game developers, right? So in that sense. And on that note, thank you both for sharing your lists for last year. This has been a special edition. We won't do this again for a whole year, probably unless we just later on in the year going like, did you remember that game? And yeah, it's been very interesting. Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for having us.
And to our listeners, and that's it for our 2019 recap Game of the Year edition. What are your predictions for next year? What games will make you think? Why don't you join our discussion on @LevelDesignFM on Twitter and let us know what games are on your radar for 2020. Until next time. Bye! This podcast was a Command Studio production. Our editor is Matthew Lever and our producer is Bridie Rose. You can contact us directly at show@leveldesign.fm or you can tweet us at @leveldesign.